How about the shakeup? A mighty shakeup in the top 25. And this is wild when you consider that number 3, number 4, and number 5 all lost on the same day. Penn State loses to Oregon, LSU loses to Ole Miss, Georgia loses to Alabama. The first time 3 AP top 5 teams lost in the same week this early in the season since 2008. Shouts to Ohio State, handle their business. Back here with Emory Hunt, Cardale Jones, and let's welcome in 24/7 Sports college football analyst Brad Crawford here to look ahead to the top 25. New poll released on Sunday. Oregon wins the top 10 showdown in Happy Valley, defeating Penn State in double overtime. Brad, you watched this. This was an absolute thriller. You saw Penn State come back from down 2 touchdowns. What are the implications of this result for both schools?
Yeah, I can't believe this defensive battle that should have gone under went over in overtime. Just a fantastic game. Double OT, Drew Aller making a bad mistake there on his first throw of that extra session. But I think this will move Oregon into that number 3 spot behind Ohio State and Miami in Sunday's new AP rankings. I think this also locks Oregon into a top 4 spot into the playoff. I know we're looking 2 months ahead of time, but Oregon's remaining schedule, they play 2 ranked teams. And this was one of the toughest games on the schedule. The Ducks, man, if they get hot, they can go unbeaten again in the regular season.
Listen, for me, I think because of how Penn State handled their business in this ballgame, it came back. It's not going to be a bad drop for Penn State. I think we don't see Penn State fall off the top 10. I think they'll take a slight fall, maybe in that 8 or 9 spot, but because they played well to close out the ballgame, it made it a tight game, although they lost tough on that interception. I think this is actually going to be considered a quote-unquote good loss for Penn State based on how it happened for them.
Yeah, for sure, especially if they go to Columbus and take care of business. This would be a good situation for Penn State in the long run. But Brad talked about Oregon's remaining schedule, only 2 ranked opponents as the season sits right now. And I have no problem with that, with them coasting to potentially the Big Ten championship game. Because last year, if you look at their record, they had a gauntlet as they went into the Big Ten for their first year, playing teams like Ohio State, Michigan, and Penn State. And not to mention, they beat them all in the regular season by capturing the Big Ten championship game. So you look at their remaining schedule. USC later down the road, we'll see what the rankings look like after they lost to Illinois. And then who else is going to be ranked? You never know how that Washington game is going to play out. But Indiana will be another test for these guys. But other than that, this should be a coasting for Oregon to the Big Ten championship game.
Brad, wouldn't we want to move up Oregon to number 2, especially with Miami being idle?
You certainly could, and AP voters are going to have something to say about that. I like what Emory said about not dropping Penn State below number 8 spot. That's actually where I had the Nittany Lions being picked projected-wise Sunday morning. Like he said, I mean, this essentially goes to a draw because it's a double OT game. It's neck for neck for 3.5 hours. Total yardage was a little bit of a discrepancy, but Penn State came back in that department. I do think Penn State and Oregon may face one another again later on. Whether it's in Indy or in the playoff, we don't know yet. But I don't think Penn State's going to drop all that far. Certainly outside the top 5, but they're going to be inside the top 10 tomorrow morning.
Ranked on ranked night game in the SEC. Number 17, Alabama knocks off number 5, Georgia, snapping the Dogs' 33-game home winning streak, the longest streak by an SEC team all time. So, Brad, what does this mean? Because this is a huge win for Alabama going into their game against Vanderbilt coming up here. And then Georgia, this is a tough loss. But, again, how do you decipher, how do you evaluate the result in this one?
Yeah, we talked all week about this being a more important game for the Crimson Tide than it was for Kirby Smart and the Bulldogs, despite playing at home under the lights and all that between the hedges. Ty Simpson might be the Heisman frontrunner coming out of Week 5 based on how he played. This was a huge night for Ty Simpson. He looked great at Sanford Stadium. But I think Alabama not only will move into the top 5, but I don't think they're going to be, top 10, but they won't be top 5 because they've got too many spots to fly up. I mean, Ole Miss had a great win over LSU. Texas A&M stayed unbeaten. And Alabama still has that loss to Florida State, which, by the way, looks even worse now after the Noles loss at Virginia Friday night. So Bama's a top 10 team on Sunday morning, but not a top 5 team just yet.
Yeah, for sure, but I think they're flirting around that 8, 9, 10 range, and I think what would help them move up a little bit higher if A&M would have lost, but they took care of business today. But nevertheless, going into Georgia with a 33-game win streak on the line and taking care of business the way they did, especially how fast they started off, and you look at their only loss and how bad they looked versus another quality opponent. Wisconsin and other games that Alabama played to this point, it was hard to get a real feel for these guys, but they're the real deal, and they're going to be a force to reckon with in the SEC.
I like how they dominated in the situational football moments against Georgia, who usually dominates in that regard. We're talking about Georgia and how they never seem to wilt in these critical situations, but Bama did the same thing. So this not only looks good for them as a football team, it looks good for Ty Simpson. It also looks good for Kellen DeBoer, who felt the wrath of Alabama fans last year when they lost to Vanderbilt and this year when they got blown out by Florida State in their opening game. But now stacking these wins and how they did it in this particular game against Georgia, I'm not surprised to see them go from 17 to potentially 5, in my opinion, based on what we saw this out here today.
You think Alabama's going to move to 5?
I think so. I think because here's the thing about these
jumping
AP,
12 spots.
you know, it's
Brad, I don't think we've ever seen. I can't recall a team moving 12 spots.
But you know why though? It's going to brand name still matters, and some of these voters, we kind of joke about how some people don't watch all the games. They just see Bama beat Georgia. They see the numbers behind their names. They'll catapult Bama high up in that top 5, in my opinion. I can see that happen.
That's precisely why Notre Dame was still ranked 22 despite an 0-2 start a couple weeks ago. And they score 59 or whatever it was today on Arkansas. And you're going to see Notre Dame probably jump 5 or 6 spots right around that top 15 range. Is happening, fellas. If Notre Dame wins out and goes 10-2, the Irish will get in the playoff despite likely not having a single win over a top 25 team. Because as Cardale mentioned, Southern Cal Trojans, they're going to be out Sunday morning after losing to the Illini.
I'll tell you who's moving up. It's going to be Ole Miss and Indiana, all right?
I was just about to say Louisiana because we won 54-51 double overtime versus Barcelona. I just want to get it.
Well, good for you. Good for you. I'm telling you, those teams are moving up. College Football Playoff Selection Committee will release its first rankings on Tuesday, November 4th. Brad Crawford will give us his top 12 teams each and every week leading up to the CFP rankings. Brad, take us through your top 12 predictions for Sunday. We're going to keep them up on the screen so we can react, and we're going to throw stuff at you. No, I'm just kidding. Let's take us through it.
Yeah, so this is not how I think the playoff's going to look 2 months from now, but in Sunday's AP poll, I do think Ohio State and Miami are going to top the poll at 1-2. I've got Oregon moving to 3. Now, Texas A&M is going to move from number 9 to number 4. Why? Because 4 of the 7 teams ahead of the Aggies lost, and the other was Oklahoma, and they were idle with an injured quarterback. So you can't have Texas A&M behind Oklahoma, not after A&M was able to hold off a pretty decent Auburn team. Number 5 spot for me is harder. I think Ole Miss has a shot of getting there based on how it looked. This is the first time in several years, fellas, that not only Lane Kiffin beat an elite opponent, but he did it at the line of scrimmage, just pounding the opposition with a pretty good run game. Then Trinidad Chambliss, of course, with a key touchdown pass late in that game. So Ole Miss, Oklahoma round up the top 6, and I've got Indiana, Penn State, Alabama, Texas, Georgia, and LSU. There's a 4-team logjam for me in that 9 through 12 spot in the SEC. I don't like Texas as much as anybody right now, but they haven't lost since that opening game against Ohio State, and they're going to just keep moving up in the polls because teams ahead of them keep losing.
I didn't see Texas Tech in there.
Yeah, I would.
Do you have a problem with that?
But they're not a top 12 team right now.
I will put if not Texas Tech, I would put Iowa State in place of Texas at 10.
I agree. I was just about to say that. I think Iowa State deserves the right to be one of the top 12 teams right now. And I'm okay even switching Alabama and Penn State around from the 8-7 with Penn State losing and Alabama having the probably most impressive win, one of the most impressive wins of the season thus far, going into Georgia and snapping that 33-game win streak.
All right, we'll see how it plays out. I always love these conversations because it just gets us excited for when the CFP rankings and we can all just haggle and argue. It's why we love the sport. Brad Crawford, Emory Hunt, Cardale Jones here on CBS Sports HQ. Men, thank you. Week 5 has been awesome. It's been wild. 3 top 5 teams go down. 3, 4, and 5 knocked out. Here's a look at the odds to win the national championship. Number 1, Ohio State, the favorite to run it back at plus 500. Oregon hot on their trails, nipping at their Nikes. The last school to win back-to-back natties, Georgia, in 2021 and 2022.